Everything was orderly. And on the first day was certain things, the second day was other things. And everything happened according to a plan. And we all know from our own lives that the sun comes up and the sun goes down. Well, actually, we turn away from the sun and then we turn back into the sun. But there's an order to the universe. And there's an order to the lives of the Jewish people. And the women who went to the tomb were the ones who went at the designated time to take spices and hopefully find someone there to roll the stone away so they could go and embalm the body of Jesus. Now, because he was killed on the eve of Passover, and actually it's the beginning of Passover because days begin at night. Okay? In the Jewish tradition, the night comes before the day. And because the evening was coming, the women could not go and do the work of embalming. They had to wait till the Passover was completely over. So as soon as dawn came on that Sunday morning, they went according to their law, according to keeping order, to go and do the ritual they needed to do for Jesus' body. And that, my friends, is when all heaven broke loose. Because they did not find what they expected to find. And they did not see what they expected to see. And sometimes when all heaven breaks loose, it gets very confusing and kind of crazy. And suddenly, there are men standing there from who knows where, and they are glowing. They're glowing from within. And they try and settle these poor frightened women on the ground because they don't know what to do with this. And you know what they say? They say, don't you remember? Don't you remember what he said to you in Galilee? Way back there? Do you remember? This is an interesting word, remember. In the Greek, there are a few different forms that have different meanings. And the one that's used here is not just simply going back and thinking, oh yeah, that's what he said. It's taking those words and bringing them forward and hearing them again with new power and new insight. Do you remember? Can you go back and take those words he said, bring them forward, and understand what's going on now? And you know what it said? Again, that same form of the word. They remembered. The women could go back, bring those words forward, put them into their life situation and go, oh yes, this is what he said, and this is what is happening now. It's not just words, it is what is happening now. So of course the first thing they do is run back to where the other apostles and other followers were gathered with this great news. But you know, Jesus' death was sudden and confusing and frightening. And all those people back in that room were a little confused and a little dismayed and probably still in shock and probably doing some post-traumatic work. So when these women come forward with this amazing news, they kind of go, yeah, they're women. What do you do? Really? Because clearly this thing didn't happen to men. This happened to the women who were willing to open themselves to the possibility of the impossible and to carry that word and deliver it to those who may or may not believe. The sun comes up, the sun goes down, the sun comes up again. And in the universe, all is in order. And then when heaven breaks through, we forget that. we forget that. Now, if you go back through the story, in fact, if you go back through any of the gospel stories, you'll know that Peter is an impulsive guy. And he says things that he really can't follow through on. Things like, I'll follow you to the death. Things like, I would never deny you. And we all know what happens when you're under pressure. And Peter is the best of us, under pressure. But he is the one with the most genuine impulses. Really. The words he says are his great intentions. His follow-through, not so much. But his words and his intentions are pure and faithful. And so it's Peter that follows his impulse, who follows that little nudge of spirit and runs to the tomb. And he sees that it's true. He goes back and tells the rest. Now they can believe it. Because Peter speaks with some authority. There was when I was looking for hymns for this service, there's a lovely hymn that I sang through and I looked at it and I thought, what a lovely hymn. And then I had to put it down because it said that the apostles saw their Lord. That they were the ones that discovered the tomb. They are the ones that discovered that Christ had risen. And I had to put that inside and go, no, it was the women. They were doing what they were called to do by their church tradition. They went according to the rule of order in the faith. And that's when heaven broke in. And they were the ones that carried that news, and they were actually the first preachers of the good news. The preachers of the good news. Now that means that any of us can. Any of us can share the good news. We might say it with our voices. We might say it with our actions. We might say it with our very presence. But sometimes heaven breaks in crazy, mysterious ways. And sometimes people need whoever is there to be the bearer of the good news in times of chaos. Sometimes it feels like we live in chaos right now. If you watch TV news, it can feel very overwhelming. It can feel chaotic. It can feel like end times. And that puts us in a state of confusion, a state of anxiety. A lot of people are going through trauma right now in their lives. They're being traumatized by the weather. They're being traumatized by conflict and war. There are many ways that trauma is grabbing hold of the population of our planet and holding them hostage. And we are the ones that go into that place and we carry with us the good news. But didn't you hear? The Lord is risen. Have you heard the good news? Christ is not dead. And he will not die anymore. We are the ones that go in with our voices. We are the ones that go in with our hands and our hearts. We are the ones that go out into the world with our very presence, of our assurance that we know who's in charge. And that even when chaos seems to reign supreme, the sun still rises, the sun still sets, and Jesus is still alive. The Lord is risen.
He is risen indeed.
Hallelujah. Amen. By the way, none of that was on these cards.